Welcome to the Town of Richmond meeting of the Water and Sewer Commission, February the 5th, 2024. Welcome and any public comments? No public comments, so we'll move on. Any additions, deletions, or modification to the agenda? Nope. No changes there. Okay. Moving along here, approval of minutes.
I move to approve the minutes of January 16th, 2024 as written.
This is David. I'll second.
David, second. Discussion? No discussion?
Good to me.
All right. A vote on approving the minutes from January 16th, was it?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. All in favor, say aye.
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 Jay, aye.
Morgan, aye. It's unanimous. Ayes carry it. All right. Moving right along.
Morgan, I move to approve purchase order 4771 for all seasons, and the amount of $51,125.02 for repair of the first sewer pipe over the bridge.
Yes. Do I have a second?
This is David. I'll second.
Okay. Discussion?
That work is all complete?
Yes.
The scaffold is okay.
Yeah, the work is complete. Scaffold is removed. The repairs been made.
And the stuff is flowing. Vote on purchase order 4771. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aaron, aye.
Bard, aye. Jay, aye.
Morgan, aye. The motion carries.
Morgan, I move to approve purchase order 4815 to the town of Richmond for, this is the
Transfer.
the water administrative support, sewer administrative support. Total amount of $41,500.
Second.
This is David. I'll second.
Okay, discussion? Anybody? So just a quick, this is just moving monies from accounts to different accounts.
Yeah, and it's basically to pay back for time, like
Right.
mostly me and Connie's time, and any other administrative support that they get. But like when we do work for water and wastewater, it's payback for that.
Right.
And there's a backup document with sort of assumptions on time and like.
Right. Okay. Okay. Holding a vote on 4815, purchase order number 4815. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aaron, aye.
Bard, aye. Jay, aye.
Morgan, aye. Motion carries.
Morgan, and I move to approve the warrants.
This is David. I'll second.
Okay, as quoted. All right. Discussion on the warrants. Is it electronic warrants? Two other warrants, I think.
Yeah, we have FEMA warrants and water. Do we need to vote?
Usually just do them in one swoop. I guess just one note, the FEMA warrant, that's for the repair under the bridge. It's looking unlikely that it will be a FEMA event, but we wanted to just continue to track it separately until we get an official no from the state, which I think is probably coming. And at that point, we'll have to come back to see how do we want to pay for that, out of a reserve fund or overspend unassigned. But we'll make that decision
We
later.
can hold a raffle here in Richmond for the right to name the pipe.
I love it.
It
All right.
worked out for
Ending discussion on approving the warrants. Holding a vote on approving the two warrants. All in favor, say aye.
Aaron, aye.
Bard, aye. Jay, aye.
David, aye. Morgan, aye. Motion approves. So carries. All right. Warrants out of the way. That's all right. Next on the agenda, items of presentation. First up, wastewater evaluation. Probably be easier if you come up to the table. Yes, please.
Yep, I'll share your, yep, if that's easiest for you, well, I've got it, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll do that.
So I put together a presentation. Let me introduce, I'm Kirsten DiPietro Warden with Hoyle Tanner and Associates, senior engineer there. This is Amy DeCola, project engineer. And we also have John, our Vermont business manager from our office. We just finished up the, what do you want to, get into?
Yeah, there we go.
There we go. We're going to run through this real quick because there's a lot of slides, but I just wanted to give you an overview. We just finished the 20-year evaluation report of your wastewater treatment facilities, which include your collection system, your pump station, and the wastewater treatment plant. And go ahead. Yeah. So we're just going to discuss our recommended project. We'll go over the total project cost and then just next steps from there. Go ahead. And whenever you come to like whenever you come to like
There we go.
you can just go right to the next slide. Go ahead, keep going.
I think I got the hang of it now.
Got the hang of it.
Mhm.
So, we're going to start with influent pumping. You have a wet well. If influent comes into the plant here, it is then boosted up to a higher level to go through gravity to the rest of the plant. This is a critical point in the plant where failure of any of these pumps will result in flooding. The two pumps in there are original, well, not original, but they were not upgraded in the 2003 upgrades. So they're very old. One pump is basically not working. It is not used, and a temporary replacement was put in just in the last year. This is a critical thing that definitely needs to be upgraded soon. Our recommendation is to replace with a 3-pump, like a triplex pumping arrangement, so that you have better turn down at low flows, because the plant is operating about 33% of its capacity right now, but sees extremely high flows when there's a wet weather event. So the December wet weather event pushed 2.3 million gallons through the plant, and those pumps that one pump kept up. But so that is our new design criteria. And then I showed a little example of that's kind of a back of the napkin how I would arrange those 3 pumps. Go ahead.
Now, the newer pumps, are they, how are they going to be wired?
They will be on VFDs. They'll be controlled using, we'll use level sensors in the wet well. So we'll flow pace. We'll do a flow pace arrangement when you have high flows. Basically, they'll go back into a draw fill mode when it's, low flow. So the wet well will fill up, the pumps will kick on, the wet well level goes down. If you had a lot of flow coming in, we have it called, I call it storm mode. It's more like flow matching. So there's a bandwidth where the pumps will ramp up. The VFD will ramp up the speed of the pump to keep pace with that influent flow.
Do we have enough usage there to look at maybe 3-phase wiring or?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
A lot more efficient.
Yep.
And this is one pump pumping at a time, or all 3 of them working?
So under low flow conditions, it would be 1 pump. And under high flow conditions, it would be 2 pumps. So the state of Vermont has redundancy requirements. You must be able to pass your peak hourly flow, your peak flow, with 1 unit, largest unit out of service. So 1 pump is always not in use.
Mm-hmm.
Arrangements. So by going to a triplex, we can split that peak flow in half, giving you a better turn down. So I need to split 1,600 gallons per minute in half by 2 pumps. That's 800 gallons per minute per pump, but I get a better turn down at lower flows.
I'm sorry, turn down?
Turn down just meaning I can, using a VFD and a variable frequency drive, I can decrease the hertz, and the pump will actually pump on the curve at a different point.
More efficiently.
More efficiently.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So you're not just pushing through. If it's a 50 horsepower pump, it's not continuously operating at 50 horsepower. It'll turn down, ramp down, and operate at a lower brake horsepower.
And reduce electrical costs.
Yeah.
And the cost of installing 3 pumps versus 2 bigger pumps will be outweighed by the energy savings, I assume. I just feel like someone might ask that question.
Yeah, I have not done that analysis, but I feel pretty safe saying that yes, it would.
Okay.
Because right now, I mean, the pumps that you have in now are way oversized for the use that they do. Yeah.
And this is the pump that the man from up north got
Yes.
for
Phil
us,
Laramie.
right? Phil,
Agree, but-
thank you.
We're
red
we're
one.
living on borrowed time right
Yes,
now.
yeah,
literally.
yeah.
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 It's like the name of a new book, The
Yeah.
Man from Up North.
You can go ahead. Headworks, we're recommending that a new Headworks building be built over the existing wet well. And the importance of this, or the significance of this, is that right now, the reason those pumps are in bad shape and are at risk of failing is sometimes you get rocks or large objects that come in, and there's not adequate screening ahead of it. So generally, like what we like to see in a headworks is you have screening removal before a pump that protects the pump from ragging, it protects it from bricks, rocks, anything that comes down to influence it.
That's been a huge problem.
So my idea is to convert that wet well by pouring an intermediate slab and putting a mechanical multi-rake screen, which if you think about it, it's just, you have your bars, it just rakes it up and it's going to bring it to the second level up higher, so this is a very large screen. They're really cool. If you've ever seen one in action. Brings it up to a higher level where it then is put into like a wash compactor where it's washed, compacted, and dried. It dries it out for a much more tidy disposal. So that is my idea. And then the second part is there is an existing headworks building that has a combination unit of screening and grit. We wouldn't need the screening there, and we would convert that to just grit removal, which is important to protect the rest of the plant.
So that's coming back, you're taking the bulk of the whatever degradable stuff out first, and then the grit goes to the next one.
So we would do that before the pumps, and then the pumps would bring it up to the existing headworks where it would go through grit removal.
Right there.
So the screen will not take out all the grit, but the grit will.
Grit removal. You can go ahead and oh, here's a good example. So there's your wet well. This is what a bar, a multi-rake screen. So it's quite long, and it would just sit in that channel down at the bottom, and it would rake up to the upper level. And I've done these at several big pump stations ahead of
this spans the whole width of what we're looking at.
Yeah. So this, and then we would put a superstructure, a building on top of this.
Okay.
Is this similar to like a gutter chain in a barn? Kind of like, does it go around and have like paddles every
so yeah,
number of
rakes, multi-rake, yeah, there's several of them, and so they continuously pull
Okay.
like I'm going to call them screens.
Rotating.
Yeah.
Brings them up, and then it comes over
Go
the top.
back around.
Yep. Exactly. Yep. Biological treatment. In the anoxic selectors, we're looking at replacing the mixing system. We've proposed for the recommended project a compressed gas mixing system. They're highly efficient. They use a lot less horsepower and energy to mix. I won't get into the technology. This is one mode of mixing. Right now, there's submersible mixers, which tend to fail after about 5-6 years and have to be replaced. That's for the anoxic selectors ahead of the aeration tanks. Go ahead. And then in the aeration tanks, we're looking at replacing the diffused aeration grid inside each basin. New blowers, the technology and the efficiency on blowers just continues to get better year after year after year. So those blowers would be more efficient. I should note, and in the report, if you got into the report, you'll note that the existing blowers do not deliver enough air for your biological treatment right now. It's not that they are undersized from the original design criteria, and I think we talked about this before. You have pretty high organic loadings coming into the plant. So
and this system operates without fish.
yes.
Yeah.
So,
and what is the condition of like those concrete wells at the moment? Like, will the concrete have to be repoured, or are those in decent shape?
We would do a structural assessment of the concrete when when you're in design, because I think right now Steve has one that's low. So when we get into final design, we would come out, have our structural engineers come out and just take a look. Generally, the concrete's mostly in good shape. I haven't heard from Steve that there's been significant falling or anything like that.
That's what I would think.
Your comment that we have higher BOD, could you pause there and explain why you think that's so?
Well, you're accepting a lot of septage, and so that septage goes into your solid stream and gets dewatered. There's we call it a pressate. The liquid that comes off of the dewatering equipment goes back to the headworks. That is high in organic loadings like BOD and TSS and nitrogen and phosphorus. But we found looking at your data, and this is where I might have, Amy did a lot of the data analysis. We found that your influent, you're seeing high organic loadings coming from your municipal influent, coming from.
Would that include the brewery?
Mhm.
Okay.
So I'm just going to observe this, not so much for you, but for us. So if you pause and think that we have to make heavier investments because of that loading, it should drive our cost structure as well, which
Rate
includes, yes, our rate structure. And while Stone Corral has pre-treatment, I don't know what's left after the pre-treatment and how that compares.
And I'm
to-
not real familiar with what kind of treatment they have and whether it's adequate.
Usually it's just probably a blower event. Yeah.
So I think it's something we should consider moving forward because it seems patently obvious that we're making heavier investments or contemplating investments based on the loads that we have.
Mhm.
And one might observe that we ought to charge the people responsible for that load.
Yeah.
Right, to help with the
Some of
infrastructure.
some of the challenge maybe, as Christian pointed out, is there is septic coming in, and then we have users here. So that would be maybe a point to try to break out if there's
Yeah.
any way possible of doing.
So I think we had a real challenge with, I mean, understanding what is necessarily coming back from the pressate, because there's not a real good way to quantify it and sample it, and what is coming in. And I would, as you go into design, I would recommend more sampling, more discrete sampling on either like the pure influent and the septage, or sorry, not the septage, the well, the pressate coming off of the septage. I do want to just pause here for a second. Amy, in her brilliance, created a biological model. And what we did was we looked at your existing tankage. I mean, understanding that you have zero room to expand this plant. And you're in a floodplain. There's no way, unless you relocate the whole plant, you're going to ever be able to do anything else. So we looked at your existing tankage and we really tried to, what can we squeeze out of this tankage? How much can you accept from organic loads? And so the whole, we established that right up front. We did a proposed design criteria for all your organic loading, and it is based on what the limits of your tankage, what you can treat, without having to do some kind of advanced treatment, which could, there are other things. There's like a fixed film kind of thing, IFAS. There are other types of biological treatment processes, but it is not our recommendation that you need to do that right now because you are operating at such a low capacity. You have room to treat what's coming down in the influent sewer, the municipal influent, and you can treat septic. There might be a point in the future, it could be 20 years from now, it could be 30 years from now. You might need to look at an upgrade, a biological upgrade that has some kind of fixed film biological process or a membrane process, but that's not now, and that's not in the next 20-year horizon. Did you want to add to that?
Just like the idea is that you're operating at a fraction of your permitted flow. So although you have high loads, your flow is really low compared to what the plant is designed for. So that's why you're able to really squeeze a lot of treatment out of the existing tankage as it is right now, without a need to construct more tankage to treat flows that you're not actually experiencing on like an average day.
So I guess the good news is you can treat everything that's coming in right now.
Mm-hmm. So if somebody built a 500 house subdivision, then we would have a problem.
We would have to look at your capacity. Yeah, I mean, we would have to take a look at that. And it might mean that you don't accept as much septage.
Right. All right.
Right.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you.
So this is just replacing age-related equipment replacements. The chemical feed and storage area doesn't meet state requirements for containment volume, so we'd add a little bit to the wall there and replace the feed pumps. You can see there's one there that doesn't meet the redundancy requirements. These are small little things to upgrade. Again, here it's age-related replacements, replacing that valve and the actuator and the magnetic flow meter. This is a part of the biological process to return sludge to the biological process to help feed the bugs. Okay, go ahead. And then the waste activated sludge, you have to remove sludge from the process to keep the biology correct, and replacing the one. This pump has never been replaced. I hear he loves it.
The Penn Valley.
Penn Valley, he loves it. It's never been replaced, but it's so old that he can't find parts for it anymore.
Like that 67 Chevy.
Filtration, we need to do a structural assessment of these steel tanks. You can kind of see a little bit of this rust corrosion on the steel tank. That might just need some, it may not be bad, it might just need to be taken down, sandblasted and recoated. And then the filter, the cloth media filters, the cloth should be replaced. And there's some, not all of, I know Steve has already replaced some of these things, the valves and some of the drive motors. So some of these things may not need to happen because he's been replacing them as he goes. But new instrumentation in SCADA, I know he has, these are all completely in manual, and he expressed it would be nice when he has a wet weather event to be able to go to SCADA and say, turn on the second filter. He doesn't have to do it in manual mode.
Why would that tank not be some sort of stainless steel or plastic material? Why is it steel?
It's all about the money.
I don't even know if they make these in stainless steel. They make them concrete, but at this point, you would have to take the roof off to get a new tank in here. So I think the way to go, the recommendation is to just do any repairs that need to happen to these tanks.
And hasn't coating technology improved over the last 20 or 30 years?
I would believe so, yeah. So I don't think there's a structural issue with these, but we would assess it during final design. You can go ahead. The UV disinfection system is just to be replaced with new bulbs. They've made headways in the technology of these bulbs, and they're more efficient. Replacing the monitoring system and the intensity parameters on the alarm.
Why is there styrofoam blue board over that?
I have no idea.
To hold the coffee cups.
Probably.
Effluent flow measurement. So this
We're saving it.
we've had some part of our analysis found that the effluent flow meter kind of taps out at a certain MGD, and it's around 1.66, yeah.
Or 1.15, sorry.
Well, it's supposed to measure up to 1.15 and it doesn't. And so we had some issues with trying to figure out what kind of peak flows were coming through. And the recommendation here is to replace that V-notch weir with another one set slightly lower, change the geometry of it a little bit so we can get a higher flow measured out of it, and then just replace the level sensor above it. I'm going to actually just pause here. If you see the effluent, there's a sump here. This is where it exits the plant. It goes kind of towards the top of the screen. And what you see there is a sump pump. This is something that Kendall rigged up after Irene. During Irene, what happened is the river rose so high that it came back up the outfall into the sump over the weir there. And then when you saw that picture of the UV channel, that elevation is below the 100-year flood elevation. It just poured over the top of that and filled the whole basement. I just wanted to go ahead. So there's that picture of where Irene came up to. That sump pump that Kendall put in has saved the plant a few times. especially during the July 2023 flood and the one that just happened. The July one was a flood. The December one was more of a wet weather event. He was able to keep up with getting flow out of the plant, even though the river was right there. And so what he did was he put a check valve on the outfall, so flow, like a backflow preventer. So flow couldn't come back, but he still needs to get it out, right? So that sump pump was just shooting it out the wall. So my recommendation is to build a real effluent pump station. The state will require redundancy, and it's too critical of a piece of infrastructure to not do it like properly. So you can go to the next page. It's a wet well just off to the side. We would connect back into the existing manholes and then put a backflow preventer off of that manhole 13. These pumps would not normally be on. They would just be sitting there for these events. I mean, they could be exercised so that they are always ready to go. But this is basically, pumping out 16. We would size it for that 2.3 MGD that was just recorded. That was actually recorded through the plant in December. He was putting that flow through, and it would just pump it up and it would just discharge out the back of the plant, because at that point the river's right there. So
this is an extra structure added onto the outside of the.
Yep.
Okay.
Septic receiving. So through conversations with Josh and Steve, they would like to accept a lot more septage. I think you've heard when we came to talk about purchasing the new channels, like they can't accept septage. Well, they weren't being able to accept that because there's a limitation with what they could press. And the current loadings, if he can get up to, we're about 400 gallons per month. We were talking about the proposal is to actually accept up to 250,000 gallons a week.
So this, for me, gets into the price structure and want to have versus need to have. My view is the septage doesn't need to have. So if we're doing it because of revenue, what is it driving in terms of cost?
So we'll get to the cost later on, but I did a quick calculation at 13 million gallons, and that's like as if it was coming in, routine, like every day, 5 days a week. You would at almost 8 cents a gallon at 13 million gallons. That's $975,000 a year in revenue.
Yeah. So what's my cost?
Your cost last year, or in fiscal year 22, you spent, I'm going to round up, about $250,000 in biosolids disposal and chemicals to press those biosolids.
That's not my cost.
See.
Oh, like your capital cost.
I want the whole thing.
Yeah, the whole thing.
And just deep background.
Yeah.
I've run into this over and over and over here and elsewhere. Previous police chief who was costing out the cost of police services as the salary of the officer, in spite of the fact that they also had additional compensation, overhead, a cruiser, so equipment. I think we just got to go in eyes open. What is the cost structure? And if I were going to cost to allocate it, I would do as a percentage. Everything in the plant, Josh's time.
Yeah.
So see where I'm going.
Yeah.
Like eyes open.
So
pretend it's a business.
So the price, you need to replace that septic receiving unit, and that doesn't get bigger based on how much septage you accept. Okay. So the accepting more septage is going to come into pressing and disposal and chemicals for disposal. Your septic receiving unit right off the bat is about $400,000, and that needs to be replaced, or you're not going to be accepting any septage.
So you don't have to answer all today.
Yeah.
I'm really pushing the question though, because you may be aware that our septage receipt costs are among the lowest in the tri-state area.
What we charge. Right?
Yeah. It is low. Yeah, yes, you can.
Yeah, so I think I hear what you're saying. What we can do is the payback on the septic receiving components of this is different than the rates or rate increase associated with the wastewater treatment. So you need for your users that are on the system that those costs need to stay separated from the costs associated with the septic receiving. And Josh, we can work with you.
Well, not to interrupt, yes and no. So those unique septage costs need to be charged to septage, and the rest of the plant that also serves septage needs to be cost allocated to septage as well.
It's a separate operating, it's a separate, actually like separate revenue generating part of what Josh deals with. So
But I want to avoid the idea that, oh, the Richmond taxpayers have already paid for the cruiser, so the taxpayers in the next town don't need to pay for it because somebody else already paid for it.
Like what percentage of the press would go towards septic, I think is where we're going.
Everything.
Yeah.
The
As an example, but other pieces of it may not be part of the septic, right? Because septic never hits those aeration tanks.
Right, because the septage is going straight to the solid stream. And it's only the pressate that's coming out that's going back into your plant. We can definitely look at the whole, look at septage and operation and maintenance costs.
There you go.
One thing this report does not do, and was not part of the scope, was to look at the operating, like the O&M costs associated with the upgrade. And we could do that with, separating them out. I will say that the design, there are septage,
specific.
well, there's septage grants. Like the state's extremely interested in Richmond, staying as a septic acceptance facility.
Mm-hmm.
Very interested.
So if they paid for all the septic stuff, there are still other costs that.
Right.
So again, you don't need to answer it tonight, or we don't need to answer it tonight.
I've also lumped into what is considered part of septage is everything that is associated with it. So it's not just the receiving unit, it is the storage tanks, the equipment that you need to aerate or mix those storage tanks, equipment you need to pump septage over to your press, the dewatering upgrades, a dewatering upgraded building, all of that.
Mowing the lawn outside, the staff. I mean,
We
seriously.
A little bit in the phosphorus optimization study also for Richmond. So it's something we can pull in from there. Yeah.
And I realize I can't get it down to the nickel, but this is something I've seen glossed over so many times. I'm sort of hypersensitive to it.
Okay.
Can I ask one question? I heard you say that is the proposed septic receiving upgrade that would basically be necessary to receive the current volume of septage, but it will also be able to receive a larger amount. So it's not like we're over designing to get this. So this is sort of the minimum we have to do to stay in business. And if we do that, we will have an increased capacity.
Yeah, let's go to the next slide.
Okay.
Because we can't run our plant without taking septic.
There's a certain amount, there's a minimum that we have to run. Yeah.
So if you
Maybe
go
that's
to
the next slide. Okay.
So where septage is right now, it does not, like that whole garage is open. It doesn't meet code. It doesn't meet like the class 1 div 1 electrical codes. So the proposal is to enclose that area, seal it off so it becomes its own space, and replace the septage unit. Again, it'll be the same size as it is now. So that is the recommendation to upgrade septage. The next, we go to the next slide. Again, this is just volume, so we can keep going. So along with that is these upgrades that need to happen to the holding tanks. And this would have to happen regardless if you decided to take more septage or not. So it's the mixing systems that are in here. Currently, they're aerated. Our recommendation was to pivot to a compressed gas mixing system. It's a lot less energy intensive. We're still talking with Steve about his comfort level with those. And again, this is like a final, how you mix the tanks is a final design decision. We can do it with aeration. We can do it with compressed gas. But basically, the mixing and the mixing of all of the holding tanks needs to be upgraded.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, and then dewatering then becomes, if you wanted, so let's put it this way, if you wanted to expand your septic acceptance, you would need to add and you need to add to that, the channels to that unit. And the two channels you just bought would still be used, and you can add on to them. So we would incorporate all the equipment you just purchased, the PLC, the flocculator, and we would just expand upon that if you want to. So that's existing setup right now with the trailer in there. And our proposal is to upgrade this building to separate that trailer bay, because there's a lot of odors associated with that and off-gassing. I don't know if you guys have been down there.
We know.
Okay. Makes your eyes water.
I was looking for that and I didn't see it on the list.
If we go to the next one, there's my proposed building. So it's an expansion of this building down. I can't see how far, but it's expanding it down. It's also, what I'm not showing on here is the addition of, say, a garage for storage where the old sludge drying bunker is. That's out there. It's the demoing that and adding a garage bay for kind of like work garage for them. But this is giving more room. It has a dedicated electrical room that would then be separated from the main area, so it could be not exposed to any of the odors. It's providing chemical, so there's the polymer that's needed for dewatering, but it's also providing a coagulant tote so we can dose the pressate before it comes back into the liquid stream. And it's just relocating that sludge storage tank or the sludge day tank. It's got new sludge feed pumps. Right now, there's one pump that feeds. That pump goes down, you're not pressing that week. So it's giving some redundancy in those systems. Just a bullet list. I don't need to go through all these, but I think some of the, you see flood mitigation. In an upgrade, the state would require you to be ready for a 500-year flood, which might require some flood barrier gates, that you would put in at the garage doors. If there's some areas that the finished floor slab is just slightly below that 500-year flood, be looking at a new generator.
I was pondering this earlier, thinking about the site beyond just the doors of almost like seawalls. Like, what do we need to build seawalls around the place?
Well, it gets tricky. We actually talked about this, but you still have to drive onto the site. Like, you still have to have the sludge trailer be able to drive onto the site. Could you build more of a berm? I'm not sure if
I think the city of Venice has gates.
Yeah, I was thinking about that trip to Venice. We have it in the budget.
How much higher is a 500-year flood than a 100-year flood?
It's not.
Out of curiosity.
Oh, from the 100, I know. Do we have that somewhere? I know we do.
Is it?
You remember it?
We've only had 500-year floods in the last 10
Where would
years.
it be?
I thought we were getting 100-year floods.
Oh, we get
now.
those about twice a year.
Right. I'm just worried about what a 500-year flood.
Yeah.
Once every 5 years.
It's a moving target, isn't it?
Take everything divided by 100.
500 years
Yeah.
feels like maybe it could reach our house.
And here's the thing, like, when we designed
okay,
the
right.
plant like 20 years ago, they changed the 100-year
Oh, yeah.
flood elevation.
Oh, totally.
It's
Yeah.
I
changed.
think happened around 2011.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, so I recognize, I was thinking when you described, like, you're not going to be able to expand, moving is a daunting prospect. So, and you can't elevate the whole thing as you would a residential building. So what's left is barriers, right?
Yeah.
Berms,
Yeah. And those flood doors do work for that. And that is like, you're watching the weather, like, that's something that they'd have to come and put in. But I think that would be.
Well, we're not the only municipality with a wastewater treatment plant and a
In a
low-lying
floodplain.
area next to a river. By design, that's kind of where they have.
That's
to
where
be.
they are. PLC and SCADA upgrades. That kind of instrumentation, that stuff is out. It's outdated already. Those things need to be upgraded frequently. A plant water system right now, the plant utilizes potable water. So we could take water off the effluent, disinfected water, and use that throughout the plant. Obviously not for like washing your hands or anything, but there's many uses where
Right.
that could be used, and that would save on water consumption.
We're only allowed one fish tank joke per meeting.
So, and there is a significant need for HVAC upgrades. That has been part of the problem. The HVAC systems are not necessarily functional, and so you
Right.
start getting corrosion.
Not just corrosion, but it's not safe. It's not safe
It's not
for you
safe.
to be under.
Did you find it?
No, but I
No.
think it's about 3 feet.
About a
Okay,
3 feet
yeah.
difference.
How many feet?
3
I think it's about 3.
between the 500 and the 100.
Because when we had to turn off the
Versus
SCADA
3
alarms
volts.
because the air was so toxic that they would never not go off.
Yeah.
That alarmed me.
Well, that would mean
Yeah.
having a HVA system that incorporates maybe 50% outdoor air and.
Yeah, it would.
What is
You'd
that?
have to have, so the code is dependent on what it's rated for, but I think if it's class 1 div 1, I think you have to have 6 air changes per hour.
Okay.
So and the areas that are rated for that are the headworks.
Right.
The septic area is rated for that.
Right.
So it's anything that's prior to the aeration tank, because the aeration tanks kind of strip those volatiles off.
So you don't need that in the dewatering building? Not that level anyway?
Not that level. It probably goes to more like 12 air changes per hour.
Wait, I was 6 per hour.
Sorry, I said that backwards completely.
Oh, it goes from 12 to 6?
Yeah.
Okay, so every 5 minutes, every 10 minutes. Still a
Okay.
decent amount of rate exchange.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting though.
So they're yeah. You can declassify areas by providing more air exchanges. I said that completely backwards.
No, that's fine.
So the
Gotcha.
collection system, the report also looked at your collection system. Alex Arsenault from our company went out and did an assessment, popped manholes, and took a look. And 15 manholes were identified for cleaning, and those 6 were identified for some, minor replacement. Maintenance was replacing bricks, and I think that is all work that the town can do.
What does cleaning entail? High pressure type of?
Yeah. Yeah. Hiring a vac truck.
Not a toothbrush.
Not a toothbrush. It's usually like a Vector truck that's
Okay.
like, pulling them out and it's jetting them. And there's,
Significant bill.
contracts
Okay.
that do that. Go ahead. And then the Bridge Street pump station. You guys were talking about the force main repair that just happened. The pump station's impacted every time the river comes up. It's also extremely old. I think it's like Korea War era.
Yep.
And it is amazing that it has lasted this long, but that station needs to be completely replaced. So full replacement with a submersible type, or one of the things that we're going to recommend is that you actually do a little bit more analysis to provide some alternatives. There's other technologies like a suction lift kind of station where everything's up high and it just, pulls up. So that would be our recommendation, that we kind of dive into what kind of alternatives would make sense for that station being where it is and being how it's always impacted by floodwaters.
Would it be in a different spot?
That could be looked at.
Okay.
Yes.
We're back to the same thing. So you either move it, you elevate it.
Yeah.
Or you try to protect it, right?
And then, so this is just a summary of the cost, and what you'll see here, this is in the report. I broke the areas into these 4 different categories: collection system upgrades, which honestly, I think it's in here, but I think the town would do that on your own, or, your staff could do most of that work on their own. The wastewater treatment facility upgrade, flood mitigation upgrade, and the flood mitigation includes the Bridge Street pump station. It includes the effluent pump station, and it includes like the flood doors, flood barriers. And then septic receiving is, like I said before, everything that's associated with accepting septic, which would be the septic acceptance receiving unit, the modifications to the building, the storage tanks, anything associated with storage tanks, anything associated with moving septic, and the dewatering upgrade. And right now, at this preliminary time, you carry a hefty contingency of 30%, just because you don't know what you missed and what could change. And in the time between conceptual and and design and construction. And then you'll see some different engineering costs as listed below. And so the final number, you'll see 15.5 in today's dollars. I escalated that to a construction bid opening date of April 2027. And how we do this is we engineering news record, the construction cost index is, it's been publishing these indices for years, and we track them, and then we take a best fit line. And sometimes before the pandemic they were on one trajectory, and then the pandemic happened and they went like this, and now they're starting to flatten out a little bit. But we put a best fit line to that. It's a linear progression, and then we just, okay, let's go out to April 2027, and that's how we make that escalation. So that's how that's done.
So I have a question, and this is back of the envelope number still, obviously, but if it's in the neighborhood of 5 million out of the neighborhood of 18 million for distinctly septage, yes? More or less?
Yes, more or less. Yeah.
Which is in the neighborhood of what, 30% of the project cost, something like that? When you say the state is interested, how interested are they?
Well, that is something that we would explore with them. I can tell you that they will cover 100% of the design costs.
Really?
Yep.
Well, the design is only,
I know, it's part of it. It's part of it.
So it gets us to the point of
gets you to the
discussion
point.
to say, oh, what would we be talking? I would say it's 5 million, and then you get into a discussion of, well, how interested are they?
Yeah. So that would be those would be ongoing conversations that we would need to have with the state to see what kind of subsidy grants that they have available. And these are all contingent on their program being fully funded each year.
Existing.
So, but that is as you would move forward, that would be I think, let me just back up. I think what we'd like to do is present the worst costs, and then caveat that with we would look to find you money.
Right.
How long would we have to shut the plant down to do? I assume there would be multiple phases, like
there would be phases, so you can never shut the plant down.
That's what I thought.
No, it's a good question. Because it's so small.
Well, and we were looking at like the tank that had the rust on it. Like,
so there's redundancy through the plant. So you would phase it so that you would take one aeration tank down and replace all the stuff inside,
and then do the other one.
And then do the other one. You'd take one blower offline, replace it, put that one back online, replace the other one.
And if I remember correctly, our redundancy, the way we're running right now, is kind of like a zigzag because we're not in redundancy. Is that what we learned when we toured?
You have redundancy. There's some things that are not, like that effluent pump. Some of the RAS and the waste pump aren't, there's only one of, but there's ways to round that. Like, Steve could throw a trash pump into a tank and with a fire hose and get it to where it needs to go. So there's nothing right now that is not allowing operation, but that's all part of like coming up with a sequence of construction. So that like effluent limits have to be maintained throughout construction, and it's a small site, and it would be tricky. I'm not going to sugarcoat it.
And once the project started from stop to end, would 12 months?
I would anticipate 18 to 2 years.
Okay.
Construction.
So start in 2027, finish somewhere in 2028.
And we say that there's always a startup period where you're testing and accepting that piece of equipment is performing as it should. It's connected to all its automation, and it's all tied together.
Okay. Mr. Chair, in the interest of time, we've got 9 minutes till select board, and there are a couple things we probably need to do before we adjourn. Do you want to maybe wrap this up for now?
I had one more slide, and it was just next steps.
Okay. Yes.
I think the immediate thing is I'm going to design those influent pumps and give you a recommendation on buying one of them to get you through to the upgrade. We recommend that an amendment to this study be advanced upon to look into alternatives for your Bridge Street pump station. What's the best option for that pump station? The state needs to review the 90% report, and then we'll finalize it upon their concurrence, or any comments we'll address, and we'll finish that out. And then this is why I had John come to talk about public outreach and funding assistance and step 2 design phase, but I think we're running out of time.
We might be able to come back at a future meeting for that. And we had a good meeting just before this about those 2 items. I think we'll have a better proposal here in another couple of weeks.
That sounds good to me.
One thing I guess to keep in mind as far as the target date for public outreach would be right now, November 5th, it would be a good one to shoot for. It's a presidential election, so we get big voter turnout. And if you were to start now, I want to build towards getting public support around the project, public understanding around the project. And some of that is rate study and components that are going to go towards allowing voters to understand fully what they're voting on.
Right. Okay. Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the time. Sorry, I hijacked.
No,
It's a lot
No,
there.
it's
Thank you.
really great.
it's just critical. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's too easy.
Okay.
It's a 3-pointer, Mr. Chair, if I could, and you think maybe we should just go right to the item, get it taken care of, because that's immediate. We have to do that.
Yeah. Okay. So it's F, and then we might have a minute for, well, that's right. Steve's not here. Review water data. Can Josh do that, or maybe?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
So
I'll share the screen quick if you want and give you a quick update.
okay.
Water data, and then the next meeting, and all good.
Yeah. So
Table till next.
item F, consideration of rescheduling the second Water and Sewer Commission meeting in February due to President's holiday falling on third Monday of the month, and we would move it to the following day.
Yeah.
Oh, we
We've been
did.
doing that a lot, but we apparently didn't get that.
Oh geez, I screwed up the date. I put Monday the 19th.
You're good. You want us to
I
be
want to move it from the 19th.
to the 20th?
Oh no, I did it right. Sorry, the draft motion's right. I read it wrong. What's it?
So we want to move it to the 20th,
Yeah.
correct? So,
I so move. Yeah.
okay, so I have a motion, hard,
Second, Aaron.
Aaron seconds, discussion, no discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Jay, I.
David, I.
Bart, aye.
I lied.
Morgan, aye.
I may not come to that meeting. We have a birthday that day.
That's okay.
Okay.
You can still vote in
Okay,
favor.
so I.
Okay, the ayes carry it. All right. And what would be the quickest update on water line inventory on water meters, Josh?
What do you want to do? Water data. Where do you want to go?
Let's do the water meter. That might be quick. Huh?
Okay, yeah, sure. So water meter, we finalized numbers. I got final paperwork from Zenner. Just got to review that, sign it, send it back to them, and then finalize the numbers for an RFP for installation. And we should be able to do that this week and get those out and get them moving. So
Right.
moving faster.
Good. Okay. So I will move to discuss items for next agenda meeting. Anybody, we want the items we didn't cover today: financials, water quality data, and
That's it.
that's it. Maybe more on the upgrades.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Yeah, the engineering. I think
Sure, we'll have fun.
that's pretty critical. We keep that ball rolling. Maybe touch on the gateway.
If they're thinking to report, sure.
Yeah. All right. So if that's it for the next agenda, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I moved.
Second.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aaron, I.
Bart, aye.
Morgan, aye. Thank you very much. Oh, we need
Oh,
to
we need to
sign
sign.
some
Yeah,
POs.
sign those guys.
Yep. Mhm.